How can you be great about being a leader? How can you be intentional about being better at leading and equipping others today? As you live intentionally, you will continually find that your passion carries you and that life matters more daily. Start to take imperfect action on those desires, dreams, and goals, and watch how much you'll grow. So if you want to be successful, practice having the mindset of intentionality. Tune in to the Dominate Your Market podcast as Joshua Miller shares what leaders should shift their focus on with the current problems in the industry. Understand how the law of intentionality will create a path towards a successful life.
Welcome to the Dominate Your Market podcast, where we interview leaders, CEOs, founders, and high-impact business development professionals to get their insights on how you can grow your business efficiently, build an amazing company, and still have a life. Today's guest is Joshua Miller, who is a master certified executive and personal coach who upskills Fortune 100 emerging and senior leaders' mindsets, skill sets, and performance, which I love the performance, so they can lead with purpose. He's also an impressive thought leader on the topic of leadership on LinkedIn. I would strongly recommend any of you following him over there. Welcome to the show, Joshua.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I know the people tuning in don't know that we've been talking for a little bit beforehand. So it's kind of like we warmed up the conversation, but super grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And let's jump into it.
Yeah, we're kindred souls, so I can't wait for this. But for our listeners, give the listeners kind of your background, where you came from, and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that I don't actually share a lot of my private life publicly. So I will divulge a bit. I'm born and raised in New York City, which I'm very much proud of. Spent the first 40 years of my life growing up in Manhattan. Yeah, that right there is just like 4 colleges and masters and thesis and whatever. But I actually started off my career in advertising. And if people have read my book, they'll know that. And my parents were both artists. Very successful in their own right. True story. So my uncle was college roommates with Andy Warhol, and Andy Warhol babysat twice, my brother and I.
Incredible.
Just kind of nuts. And my parents designed the first Sesame Street book ever, which is super proud of. My dad and my mother designed a Jiffy peanut butter. This is old school, but it's actually come back. Jiffy peanut butter, and did a whole campaign with Jimmy Carter. And then my mother, ironically, grew up right next door to Mr. Rogers.
Oh, no way!
Some random facts, yeah. But creativity has been in my blood, and so I grew up, and I went into advertising, and I had a really strong 5 or 6, maybe 7 years in advertising. That's what I knew. That's what I went to school for. What a lot of people don't know, and I write about it sometimes though, is that I lost my father to cancer my senior year in college. Yeah, it was really the most life-changing experience. Excuse me. And so I think what I didn't realize then is that was the precipitous of me starting to think more about what is my purpose in life and what do I really want to do in my life. But I had a really successful career, a short career, but successful career in advertising, worked my way up. It was kind of my grieving process to a VP status at the largest global advertising agency. And at the age of 25, had a quarter life crisis and realized I was depressed and miserable. And I did not know what to do. And I wrote about this in my book, but the short version is I was introduced to coaching. I didn't know what it was at the time. It wasn't very popular at the time. This was back in like 1999. And I gravitated to it really quickly. I realized this is what I'm meant to do. And what I didn't realize at the time, and I know now, is that what I didn't like about advertising is the culture. It was toxic. It was backstabbing, right? I love developing people. I love being in front of clients, but I just disliked the culture. And coaching saved me. It was who I was meant to be. It's who I am. And so fast forward, I left a lucrative advertising career behind, started my own coaching practice, coaching one-on-one. And then that over 23 years matriculated into group coaching and team development and workshops and public speaking and so on and so forth. So and I'm still very creative. Like, I mean, I think being a coach is one of the most developing people is one of the most creative jobs you can have on the planet. So yeah, I'm married. I have 2 amazing boys. My wife is from Argentina originally, and we met in New York. Yeah, we met in New York. She moved to Brooklyn when she was 10. And I say that because we are a huge football, not football family in our house. So of course, when Argentina won the World Cup, that was a big
Oh,
deal
wow.
in our entire atmosphere and ethos. But yeah, I mean, that's just, I live in Austin, Texas now, and I've
Great
moved around
city.
a lot. Was in California for a long time. Yeah, and I just feel blessed, honestly, Michael. I feel really blessed. I think part of it is when you get to a certain age in your life, you hear people talk about this, right? Your 20s, you're just hustling and grinding. I'm going to use words that I don't care for personally, but 10x this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
You get to your 30s, you should start to settle down. You should start to even out and figure out, okay, what do I want to do, or find your kind of rhythm, your lane, personally, professionally. When you hit your 40s, and what's interesting, Michael, is a lot of people don't know how old I am. I think sometimes people just look at me and they're like, oh, you're young looking, whatever. But when you hit your 40s, I really do believe that's when you start to hit your stride. I can't wait to 50, but 40 so far has been amazing because you really get to enjoy the benefits of what you've worked on your whole life.
Yeah.
And as a coach, and I know this working with leaders, you draw on your wisdom from your experiences, right? So it's common sense that the longer experience you've had, the more you can draw from. So anyway, that's kind of a quick nutshell. And I'm very sarcastic. That's something that a lot of people will not know unless they have an off the cuff conversation with me. But I love developing people. I just think that it's my purpose. It's my passion. It's who I am.
Period. Well, you can see it. I mean, even on your website, because I checked out your website, and even on your LinkedIn, it's prevalent that you've got that passion, right? You can just see it in your messaging. You're consistent. Your brand. And I really, when I came across that, I was really impressed. That was,
Thank you.
I don't know when, maybe 6 months ago or so. I really didn't hit LinkedIn hard until about 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Really kind of said, I'm going all in with LinkedIn. But
sure.
I will tell you on the wisdom things real quick before I ask some questions for you.
Please.
I turned 60 in 5 months.
When's your birthday?
August 31st, 1963.
No. Well, you didn't have to
August
say
31st.
63. August. That's fine.
Yeah. I don't know why I told you the year. But,
that's fine. Well, you told the world now, but yeah.
Well, it goes back to that wisdom thing, right? Where for me, I'm divorced. My kids are grown. Sure. And I want to travel, dude. I just got back from a 17-day trip to Thailand about a month ago, and it changed my life. It literally changed everything. So for me, the coaching has to fit my life. It has to, you know what I mean? Where a lot of people, they're in it for the other side of it.
Yeah.
I'm in it I love what I do, and I'm going to do it for a long time. Yeah. But it has to fit my lifestyle for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. But so let's get into this. So with the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, people, all the crazy stuff going on out there right now. Yeah. What do you think leaders should focus on right now? And I'm hoping you go a little deeper because all the leadership people on LinkedIn, there's lots of great ones, by the way. God bless all of them. Yeah. They all kind of say the same thing over and over and over again. But what should leaders be focusing on with all this crazy stuff going on right now?
It's a great question. I get asked this a lot, and I'm thinking because I don't want to give the same answer I always give, but where my brain naturally gravitates to. So I'll first start with where I'm not going to go. I'm not going to talk about resilience and innovation and creativity and remote leadership. I'm actually going to talk about mental health. I am going to talk about mental health because
huge.
And I know you'll appreciate this as a coach. Human beings' ability to empathize or sympathize, right? 2 words, empathy. We talk about emotional intelligence, all that stuff all the time. The capacity for which someone can be there for somebody else is predicated on how much they can be there for themselves, right? So leaders really need to be taking care of their own mental health and well-being right now. To think that we are out of the woods and that, okay, well, there's some stability, it's very misleading because companies are laying off people by the droves, and yet unemployment is low, 60-year low, right? There's a disconnect there, whichever story or narrative you want to believe. The point is, people are still very uneasy about work. People are being forced to go back in. Managers, people leaders, and leaders in general have to know how to navigate these conversations. It's about heart versus head. And this is a mental health wellness conversation. I think leaders in general, there's 2 different kind of spectrum. Like one end of the spectrum is they don't care and they're just trying to drive revenue and get people to do their work. And we know that doesn't work. It's command and control. And then there's the people who are really trying to work on themselves. whether it's with a coach, it's with a therapist, it's with both, right? And figure out how to prioritize their well-being. Let me just think about it. If you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of somebody else? If they're not prioritizing their own mental health and wellness, it's gonna trickle down to the culture that they're creating. And employees are smart. The days of where leaders think that like, hey, we can do whatever we want up here in the ivory tower, that's gone. That was dismantled in 2019. So my answer is mental health and wellness and well-being. I can't stress that enough. I am such a huge advocate to my clients and for myself. Take care of your well-being. Get your sleep. I'm not going to say how many hours. I personally don't care. Everyone's different, right? And I've had sleep problems my whole life, borderline sleep apnea. So I'm very aware of like the importance of sleep. Dieting, right? Because we know if you're stressed, you're going to go for the quick carbs and sugar. Exercise, right? And then whatever you need to do around your mind, body, and spirit, whatever that looks like. So that's my answer. I think it's a great question.
Good answer. It's a good answer. You know, it's interesting because in a previous life, I was a private fitness trainer. When I retired from track and field, I started fitness training, and I never did it in the gym. I was training male CEOs in their home back in the late 80s. The late 80s, right? And so I would go into a home of a guy that was worth $60 million personally. $60 million bucks. He'd open his 12-foot door. You know, the big, huge door. I'd come in. He was a physical mess, an emotional mess. His marriage was broken, or he was divorced. And these guys, I'm from Portland, Oregon. They were written up on the front page of the Oregonian newspaper up there as these heroes. And I would go into their private homes, and I was like, "What is going on?" And it was across, Josh. It was across the board.
Across the board.
All of them.
I can relate to that. I mean, I have clients who are high, wealthy, net worth, the 1%. And what I tell individuals all the time, the commonality between human beings, there's so many. It doesn't matter if you're Jeff Bezos. I get triggered. I shouldn't have said his name because, you know, we were talking about LinkedIn before, but you know, when people put down these posts of like, here are the three, you know, Steve Jobs, Tim Cook, Jeff Bezos, and they put these people on pedestals who are a mess. They didn't do anything on their own. Elon Musk, you know, definitely somewhere on the spectrum, which is fine, but like the way he handles himself, maybe not so fine. My point is, everybody is dealing with the same things. As a coach, foundationally, there's 4 quadrants of life we all are challenged with: our wellness, mind, body, and spirit, our career, our finances, and our relationship to self and others. It doesn't matter what you look like, where you live, how much money you make, what your race, religion is, how you identify. Those 4 areas are where you're going to be challenged in life. That's it. So to your point, you know, back in the 80s, 12-foot door before tonal and all these other machines, right? And in fact, you don't have any of those other machines to like almost, distract you. It's like, hey, come into my life. Literally, here's my garbage. Here's my bags. Here's the stuff, right? And you've got to work through that stuff. It's a lot. So
It's so interesting that I've come full circle to working with CEOs again. On kind of the personal development business side, right? From the fitness side. But I do implement fitness and nutrition and all of that, because if they don't have that, they have nothing. So let me ask, along the same lines with self-care, why do you think CEOs and leaders put it so down on the priority list? Why do you think they do that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think first of all, because it's not widely talked about as a must-have, it's more of a nice-to-have, similar to how a lot of organizations sometimes look at DEI. It's a check the box. It's not, so it's more reactive, right? So we know it's like a fight or flight, like, oh God, wait, we're not handling wellness. I also think a lot of CEOs who've had the privilege to work in organizations or companies in industries where they've had so much money, they throw perks at this stuff. Right. And
memberships and all that.
The memberships and all this other stuff. That's not the kind of support people need. Now, rightfully so, other companies will say, hey, we have a hotline, it's anonymous. And I applaud all the companies that have that. Now, some of it is because they have to legally, but others promote it, like in their weekly newsletters, their town halls. They say, hey, if you've got things going on, you don't want to talk to your manager or HR, go contact this third party.
Awesome.
I love that. But I think part of it is that, and I think part of it is just that leaders in general, depending on how we define leaders, they have not been conditioned to prioritize like wellness and mental health as something that is part of performance and productivity. It's more seen as like, oh, in case you're burned out from overworking, let's, here's a resource.
In case.
Yeah, it's in case or in order
yeah.
to or have to. It's kind of like how in some ways coaches have, sadly, in some organizations are seen as a it's not for career development, it's performance, right? Hey, you did something bad and we got to get you a coach. It shouldn't be like that necessarily. Right? And I think mental health is having this moment where, hey, people need to really prioritize this. So I think leaders in general have just like, no one's told me. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And some of them lean in too much into the, I didn't know, sorry.
Yeah.
Others are like,
right.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let me go pick up the book, Crucial Conversations, and let me figure out how to actually engage. I also think, and I'm just going to say it, there are a lot of leaders, male leaders who identify as males, who are just very alpha. Very driven.
That's my clients.
I cannot show any weakness. I will not show humility or empathy because for fear of, and we both know that that's just ego.
Yeah, it doesn't
pride.
work.
It doesn't work, right? And the people that report into these individuals, and it's not just men, it's just in general, the sustainability of followership is not there. It just won't be, right? So yeah, that's my answer. It's a great question.
That's awesome. One thing I noticed you talk about a lot, and we're kindred souls again on this topic.
Yeah.
Mindset.
Yeah.
I'm huge on mindset. I have been for 30 years of my life. I've read 500 personal development books, all of this stuff. But with that being said, what do you think a good leader, what kind of a mindset does a good leader have? Because I think they're going to want to hear it, because I think a lot of them, like you said, a lot of the men may become some of them will come across alpha, but they're really not truly alpha. They're really not. But the bravado, all of that chest pounding, it's not really a true alpha, right? But what's the mindset of a really good leader, male or female, by the way? We're not talking about male here.
Sure. Everyone I've worked with who identify as male, female, or other, the common thread to their successes has been their mindset. What do I mean personally, Joshua Miller? I use the word intentionality, and I will use the law of intentionality.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, I'm not talking about creating vision boards, putting them under your pillow, and having good thoughts, and then in the morning waking up thinking that, oh my God, things are going to be better. This is about being intentional. This is about having a vision and a focus. And then you could call it mind mapping, or you can call it a mantra, but it is about visualizing and speaking into existence what you want.
Love that.
Go look at any successful person, from Tom Brady, Phil Jackson, all the athletes, even singers, right? All over the world. They have all subscribed to this kind of mindset, which is being intentional, right? So if you want to double click or unpack that, one of the things I work on with my clients is around how they speak about themselves to themselves. First and foremost, there is what I call bankrupt language, and I put my clients on a vocabulary diet. There are certain phrases and words, and I think you and I have talked about this before, you cannot use. If you use them with me, we will not work together. And I'm really strict about it, right? It's like a boot camp for that. And one of my favorite expressions I often say is sometimes the weight we need to lose is not on our body, right? I think that's one of the, it's emotionally, it's mentally. So law of intentionality, I am a huge believer in this, right? So I often get asked on interviews, what's your morning routine? And I, that's a whole other conversation. But I have a mantra. I have a very specific kind of intentional mantra that I speak into existence every morning. Is literally the first thing that I do. I wake up, I look at it, and I recite it. And I don't do it 10 times or 5 times. I am telling you, we're in February 6th, and 2 of the things, maybe 3 of the things that are already on there already come into play. But let me be clear to the people listening in. This is not just writing it down and speaking it. Actions, right? One of the things, I know you know this. People like to fall heavy on, hey, I am brilliant with my insights. Well, okay, that's great. Where are you doing with them? It's the Goodwill Hunting effect, right? I don't want to know so much about your insights. I want to know what you've done with them and why you haven't done anything with them, right? And as a coach, you know this, right? That's our job, is to get curious. So, Yeah, I mean, law of intentionality is where I go around mindset. I'm a big believer. I know there's 48 laws, but like law of intentionality is a big one.
I think that's incredible because that intentionality that also kind of holds people accountable, right? That kind of
100%.
And I think as leaders, one thing I've seen with all the clients I've worked with, even back in the personal training days, these leaders they feel alone. They feel very alone. And people, they pedestalize them. They say, you're this, you're that, you're the man, you're on front page, you're the lady, whatever, but they feel alone. And I get that across the board, right? Where
it's isolating.
That's an epidemic, right? Where they feel like they don't have anywhere to turn. And then when it goes to the mental health, it could go to the extreme, which we don't want to really talk about that, but it could go to the really bad part, right?
Yeah, I think being a leader is one of the loneliest jobs, but it doesn't have to be, right? And so much of the world that we live in and culture has dictated one narrative, but then society and culture has dictated and shown us that there's another, right? I remember when it was all about offices, then it was about open floor plans. Now it's back to whatever. Like, we're always going to have these ebbs and flows. We're always going to move through these transitions. The concepts that we coach on, you and me, Michael, and others, those are the concepts that have been around forever. They're not new, right? There's nothing new here.
No.
Mindset is not new. It's how you talk about it and then how you deliver it personally. Right. It's a great question. What else? Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. So what do you think? So along the same lines as mindset and all that. So what do you think is holding people back? What do you think what's the big barrier that people have that are kind of holding them back? The last 2 or 3 days, I don't know if you see my post at all. I know you're busy over there, but I've written some pretty good posts the last couple of days. And I really get into the narrative. I'm getting into really deeper into the mindset.
Sure.
Sort of, what do you think's holding people back, especially leaders in management? What's the deal? What do you think it is?
It's two things. It's the fear of failure, right? And the way I'd frame it up is the internal narrative that they have is one of, I'm not good enough, which is something we all, myself included.
Oh, same here.
Every single day, I will be triggered. I will be challenged by the universe or somebody of why I am not a fraud.
Imposter syndrome.
100%, right? So you asked a great question. That's my answer. I think that people are afraid of succeeding because, oh my God, if I do it and I succeed, now what, right? Or I'm afraid of failure, right? Which is the imposter syndrome. So it's like driving in forward and reverse at the same time. It's analysis paralysis. And as a coach, our jobs are to identify, what are those blind spots and help them work through the fear. Fear can be motivating or it can be paralyzing. And so it will stop you in your tracks or it will move you forward. It's just that is what happens. So that's my answer. It's a great question.
I would definitely refer to it as emotional pain, right?
Sure.
To that point, take it to a deeper level of it's emotional pain.
Well, the impact. So one of the things that I like working with clients on is when we identify what that blind spot is or what that trigger is, there is a cost on you, right? It costs you something, and then there's an impact over there. Those are two sides of the same coin that must be identified. Otherwise, you're missing out, right? Because as human beings, we don't want to internalize in that positive, like, hey, I want to work on myself. Because if we did, then we'd all be out of business and, this industry would be bankrupt.
Yeah.
So it's easier to deny and deflect.
Yeah.
But then you're not transforming, you're not doing the work, right? And that's where we come in as these mirrors to reflect back to them. So yeah, I mean, look, imposter syndrome is something I won't say ironically, but it's something that I've noticed with my clients in the last couple of years, probably since the pandemic there's been an uptick in that in terms of thematic coaching. And I understand why, because the shift on how we work and who we are and how we identify has changed so radically. It's been disrupted that people are trying to find their footing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and we're wrapping up here, but so tell our listeners like what's going on with you in 2023. Yeah. I mean, I follow you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I see all these quippy cool little quotes that you put in there. It's clean, simple. You got this door theme going now, which I dig that.
So
you put these things on these different doors.
Well,
I'm kind of digging that. That's kind of cool.
That's something that was something I'd done a long time ago, and I kind of come back every once in a while. I like to stay consistent with my brand. What am I up to? So I will share this with you and the viewers. My theme, so when I work with my clients, we have to have a theme. What is your theme for the year, right? We work on this in December. And this is about intentionality. This is about mindset, right? What do you want the theme of the year? It's a very kind of existential question. My theme is red carpet. So what does that mean? For me, it means a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to be putting myself out there more than I have in the last year or two, doing awesome podcast interviews like yours, Michael. So thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome.
I'm also working on a TV show, which is something.
What?
Yeah,
Whoa.
I'm actually, so that's not something I've shared at all to anyone except to maybe 3 or 4 people. So I'm putting it out there. Hopefully, knock on wood, it will go into production and air in 2024. So stay tuned for that.
Wow.
And I'm going to double down on my LinkedIn, of course. I know that I can reach and help, honestly, millions, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And I love that. So definitely see more of a presence there. Definitely traveling. That is huge. The last couple of years I've been able to travel. Probably do some upskilling myself. Like I'm a book nerd, but I also want to get some certifications and some new different kinds of tools and assessments. It's been a while, and I love that there's some great stuff out there. And just continue to prioritize, being upfront and center with my family and myself. So the red carpet is the theme.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, that's me.
No, that's awesome. Okay, so for people that want to find out about you, give us your contact information, websites, whatever you want to give.
Yeah, so the easiest way to find me is joshhmiller.com. Josh H. Miller. You got to add the H, and I'll tell your viewers why. Because there's a person
There's another Josh Miller.
There is an individual who lives, I will not say where, owns the URL, the domain name of Josh Miller. And I've tried to buy it for years, thousands of dollars, will not sell it, does nothing.
Oh, that sucks.
So Josh H. Miller, don't forget the middle H. That's the easiest way. You can find out more about me if you want to read my book, my speaking, my blog. Just reach out to me. You want to set up a discovery call to learn more. That's the easiest way. Or on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, by all means, follow me there. But
yeah, I would definitely tell everybody that's listening to follow you on LinkedIn because your content it's phenomenal. It's very, very good.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You've just listened to the Dominate Your Market podcast with CEO, business consultant, and author, Michael Peterson. Growth-minded CEOs hire Michael to explode their revenues, build an amazing company, and create a transformational mindset that encapsulates growth, success, and ultimately happiness. His book, Dominate Your Market, is creating quite a stir in the marketplace. Go to dominateyourmarketbook.com and get your first chapter free.